candidates. First of all, to say we did invite all the candidates, but David Morris, the City MP, said that he couldn't be here, and we didn't hear from the UKIP candidate or the independent candidate. But just get the candidates to quickly say who they are and their party, and then I'll ask them to speak for 3 minutes. The other thing I'll just say is there's a couple of things on your chairs. There's an invitation to an open homes event that happens here on Saturday, and there's also a anti-fracking poster if that's your kind of thing, if you wanted to put it up in your window. So I'll ask the candidates to speak for 3 minutes, introducing themselves and saying what their stance is on the environment. I meant to pick out a hat, but I didn't, so I'll actually ask Matt to go first and to move this way.
Okay. Hi there, I'm Matt Seven. I'm the Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate for Morecambe and Lonsdale. Delighted to be here. Sorry that David Morris isn't here, but that seems to be becoming a tradition with these hustings, so I guess he wants to keep that one going. Firstly, I should say I'm very honoured to be the parliamentary candidate for Morecambe and Lonsdale. I grew up here. My family are here, my friends are here. It's a very, very precious and special area to me, both in terms of its natural environment and also in terms of the wonderful people that live here and the values that they hold. It's very, very, very important, and I want to be able to take good care of it. Liberal Democrats have got a very proud record of action and policies on the environment, and I was just looking at some of the things that we've done. I think the most powerful, the most important in the last 5 years that we've been in government has been to set up the Green Investment Bank, which isn't something that maybe we know a lot about, but the Green Investment Bank, funded by £3 billion worth of public money, exists to channel investments to renewable energy schemes and other environmental schemes across the country, and by doing so, of course, can often unlock further private investment. And they've already they've already invested £180 million worth of money in different renewable energy schemes and efficiency schemes across the country. And they plan, over their sort of lifespan of the institution, when they've invested their £3 billion, they hope that it'll see £15 billion worth or more from the private sector coming towards renewable energy and efficiency schemes. So I think that's a really fantastic example of Liberal Democrat policy making a very definitive and positive impact on the environment. And we also have what we're calling our 5 green laws, which are in our manifesto and which we will seek to obviously advance during the next 5 years of the Parliament. It includes things like a nature bill. So that sets legal standards for clean air and water, really rigorous standards. A heating efficiency bill in order to raise efficiency and to see eventually properly insulated homes across Britain. A zero waste bill, a zero carbon bill, as well as a green transport bill to increase see a nationwide network of electric vehicles, charging points, and also by 2040 to make it sure that only low emission vehicles are allowed on Britain's roads. Finally, most importantly, I'm very pleased to say that I'm also not backing fracking. I'm very proud to have signed the frack-free promise. I don't want to see earthquakes and water pollution in my home area. I'm sure that you don't as well. I think that there's other things as well that we need to talk about. There are also impacts on the environment. We need to talk about support for our farmers. What we need is farmers who are able to make a living, but are also able to do so ethically and responsibly, and to do so organically. And I very much want to support the great work that farmers do and see them getting a fair price for their milk, see them being able to pass on the farms to their children rather than seeing their children being able to take over the business. Oh,
okay, 3 minutes.
There we go.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. I'm Amina Lal, I'm the Labour Parliamentary. Do you want me to put it up?
Can people hear, or would they like Amina to speak into the microphone?
Yes, please.
Is that better? Okay. I'm a Labour Party candidate for Morecambe and Lonsdale, and I'm really pleased to be here. I do apologise, I have got another commitment which I'd already arranged before this, before I'd committed to here, so I will be leaving early, but I will try and stay for as long as possible. I'm sure there's many people in this room who feel that they are, are more radical than the Labour Party in terms of the green environmental policies, but I do believe that we've delivered in government before and we've got a good record. We did create the first national park despite post-war budgetary constraints. We led the world within the Climate Change Act in 2008, and we were the world leaders in that. Ed Miliband was the first Secretary of State in a new department establishing leads on tackling climate change. And we worked with campaigners and local forest groups to stop off the national forest. Do I think that's enough? No, I don't. We've got an ambitious green targets and green plan for the next Parliament if we're in. And I'll be quite frank. I think that I value what the Green Party is doing. I think that you've got some really ambitious targets and ambitious plans, and I think that they're very good. Ideologically, I will agree with many of those things. And in principle, I think that we have got many similar aims. But I do think that so the direction of travel, I think, is the same, but I think the speed of travel is different, and I think that's some of the areas that we need to talk about and see how we can negotiate. Certainly, if I win as the MP, I'll be working across parties and across sectors to look at what we can do to deliver locally. I've been out in the rural as well as obviously concentrating in the Morecambe areas. I've been out to visit the barn project and done some work on digging in the ground for the cables and stuff, and I think it's a phenomenal project, and it's really shown what communities can do when they come together. I think farmers absolutely locally need to be supported, particularly small and medium-sized farmers. But I do think there's some challenges ahead as well, and I think that one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in myself is I'm from a poor working class urban background, but I think poverty is and structural poverty is a real issue, and for me, one of the key areas or key challenges I think for the future in terms of environmental and green policies is how do we address poverty, and how do we address poverty in an area where environmental issues are seen as a very middle class issue. So how do we actually widen that so it becomes much more a conversation that we all have and much more inclusive. Thank you very much.
Can everybody hear me? I'm Phil Chandler. I'm representing the Green Party. This general election will no doubt be remembered for a number of things. The start of true multi-party politics in the UK, the leaders' debates where the progressive parties showed that a better, more caring politics was possible, and perhaps when the country finally woke up to the fact that our electoral system is broken. But most of all, I think it will be remembered with shock and puzzlement for the inexplicable and shameful silence of so many of the parties about the greatest threat facing the country, and indeed the world, the threat of climate change. We have been subjected to a constant stream of increasingly desperate policy announcements with the simple intent of buying our votes. They have lacked coherence, vision, and a real and deep commitment to creating a more just society where the vulnerable are supported and the wealthy pay their way. But most of all, they have offered no hope that a government formed by any of the traditional parties would act with the courage and clear-sightedness necessary to protect us from catastrophic climate change. To have an 80% chance of keeping the global temperature rise below 2 degrees centigrade, by 2030 we need to reduce our carbon emissions by 90%. The Climate Change Act commits us only to an 80% reduction by 2050. The latest research suggests that gives us less than 50% chance of staying below the 2 degrees target. This is not a tinkering at the edges threat. This is a situation that requires a major rethink of how we live and how we govern ourselves. This is not even an environmental threat. This is, as Naomi Klein points out, this changes everything. And any party that cannot or will not recognise that fact is not fit to be governing this country at this time or any time in the foreseeable future. For any chance of success, new forms of fossil fuel extraction, such as fracking, must be stopped. Since we cannot afford to burn 80% of our known reserves and still save the planet, ever more extreme ways of developing further reserves is not just pointless, it is suicidal. We need massive investment in better and more integrated renewable energy systems, but that alone is not enough. We need the kinds of joined-up thinking that Halton co-housing and hydro exemplify. Thinking that recognises the importance of energy conservation, shared transport, local food production, where we work and how we support each other to create a long-term, viable and sustainable community. The answer to fuel poverty isn't to cap energy prices for a couple of years. It's to insulate homes, break up the dominance of the big six energy companies, allow communities to control their own energy supplies, and make sure pricing is progressive so that those who use the least pay the least per unit, the opposite of what we have now. And perhaps that is the most depressing aspect of the silence. An overwhelming body of research has shown that the things that we need to do to avoid catastrophic climate change are also the things that will create a more equal, healthier and more democratic society. So how will this election be remembered? Most of the parties may have largely ignored our greatest challenge, but on May the 7th it is the people, not the parties, who will have their say. If we are lucky, perhaps it will be remembered as the election where the electorate broke the silence and voted for the well-being of all those who share this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's our turn to ask questions, and I was going to take the chair's prerogative and ask the first question myself, which is, I'd like you to all talk about how you bring sustainability and responsibility towards the environment into your own lives, the way you live your lives. And perhaps if we could start with Amina this time.
Are you okay if I sit down as well? To set a precedent down, that's much easier for her, actually. Sustainability and...
Yes, it's really how within your own life, the way you live your life.
Well, I'll admit I've got a car that I drive. I don't drive... at the moment I drive quite a fair amount, actually. But I actually mix my driving with using public transport. I've used public transport all my life and I actually enjoy using public transport. Though I think that the infrastructure of it and the reliability of it is problematic, and it's especially problematic when you're taking children to and fro on our daily journeys and carrying shopping. So I think that there's a logistical challenge with an ideological view. I recycle, I walk, I don't particularly cycle, and I think that partly what I do is I live in an urban environment where the reality of trying to be as green as possible is a challenge with a daily life of trying to balance my monthly books and provide for a family. You know, and I'm going to give you very frank and honest answers. I would love to live much more green, if that's the way of putting it, and that's my aim, but it's a constant challenge and I'm always up for pushing that challenge much further.
Thanks very much. Phil.
I suspect probably my biggest contribution to a sustainable lifestyle is I haven't flown since 2006, which was a short-term flight to Europe, and I haven't, before that, the previous time I flew was 1998, which was my last long-haul flight, and that's a commitment that I've tried to observe. So that's probably the biggest impact on my carbon footprint. I'm very pleased to say that I commute virtually every day of the year, maybe 2 or 3 times a year I might drive a car, but I commute by bus to work, and which I love. I love my commute. I start my commute on the front at Morecambe, looking over Morecambe Bay, and I feel so lucky to be able to do that, hop on a bus and off I go. As a family, we try hard. One of the things we made a commitment a long time ago, before PV took off, we missed PVs. We got solar thermal when we put central heating in our house, which has been great. But I kind of sorry that I missed the PV thing. Haven't got any more roof left to put it on. I mean, in terms of food, I mean, we're very conscious of where, we try to be conscious, and I think, Vicky, I agree with Amina, but I think probably we all find, or most of us find, is that the way our society is structured now, it does not make decisions easy. So, I mean, one of the key things from a Green Party point of view is about how do we restructure society so actually it makes it easy to make those decisions and to live a life. So, for instance, we try to source our food locally, like pretty much all our vegetables do come from locally, and things like that. I suppose for me, it's a key part of how my children, how we talk about it, how they think about it, and how they make decisions in their life. So, as I say, we probably those are the key things. And I can see I've got to stop now.
Matt.
I mean, the first thing is that I don't drive, so so I do a lot of trains. I feel at the moment, actually doing this lecture campaign, I feel like I'm single-handedly keeping Northern Rail and Virgin trains in power at times. I'm a massive train geek anyway, so I always love to know where the trains go in and all the times and how I can connect to different places. And I get really aggravated when they get really late. And I think one of the things to make an environmental world better is to get a better train network, more investment into that, and more trains going to more places, stopping at more places more regularly. Because I'm sick of waiting on a platform and they're not there when you need them to be. It drives me mad. I do a lot of walking. I walk to work every day, and obviously I walk back from work every day as well. We always try and shop as responsibly as possible. Ever since I was a little boy, I've maintained a little list of products or companies that I'm boycotting. So my Nestle and Del Monte boycotts date back to when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and they're proudly maintained. So I think ethical shopping. I mean, it's right. We have a lot of pressures on our budgets. Food is in many ways almost too expensive. Inflation of food prices can be a challenge. But I think it's important to try and make ethical and moral decisions where we can to do our bit to impact the environment.
Thank you very much. We've had quite a few questions sent in, so I'll ask one question. I'll ask Kevin to read out one question that's been sent in, and then I'll open it out to people to ask questions from the room. Kevin.
Okay, so this is a question that was submitted.
With clear evidence of the horrendous legacy we're leaving our children and grandchildren to deal with, do the candidates still agree that nuclear power is the best way forward for the area?
And we could start with Phil now.
Right. Nuclear power. I think there's a few things that we first of all need to get clear about nuclear power. It's not a zero or even a particularly low carbon source when we take into account the mining and preparation of fuel. It's not renewable, it's reliant on sources of many of which come from unstable parts of the world. It's hugely expensive. No nuclear power plant has ever been built anywhere in the world without massive public subsidy. The government has offered EDF nearly double the normal current rate of electricity to try and persuade them to build Hinkley C. Only a handful of small nuclear plants have ever been decommissioned, and none have yet in this country, nor do we have an agreed decommissioning plan for any plants in this country. No one knows how to safely dispose in the long term of spent nuclear fuel. And I don't know if people are aware that on the next to last day before this Parliament was dissolved, in a splendid show of democracy, a second piece of secondary legislation was passed which gives central government the right to overrule local councils in matters of planning to do with placing of underground spent nuclear fuel. I don't suppose that many of us heard about that debate, because there wasn't one. Neither is nuclear a good fit for renewables. It cannot respond fast enough, it cannot change its output. So even as a base load, it is not suitable for the massive rollout of renewables that we need to tackle climate change. As far as I'm aware, there is only one potentially good argument for building a nuclear power plant, for instance, at Halton, and that would be jobs. But for me, that is a backward-looking policy. We live in one of the richest areas of Europe in terms of renewable energy resource, both wind, tidal and wave. This part of the world should be a world centre in developing those technologies. We have the background in engineering, in marine engineering and power engineering. We should not be looking backwards at a dead end like nuclear power, but looking forward to turning this area into a centre for developing clean energy.
I do think that nuclear energy plays a role. I think it plays a role in the economy of Morecambe and Lonsdale, very much so. It's not simply a matter of all jobs that matter. Jobs really do matter. High quality jobs matter, apprenticeships matter, economic development matters. So I think that is actually a very big reason to have another power station at Halton. I think as well, I don't accept that it's an either-or argument. I think that nuclear and renewables combined are the solution. I think we need a massive investment in renewable energy, tidal energy, solar, wind. Absolutely, we need that. But I think we also need nuclear power stations as well. And obviously, we also need to increase energy efficiency, and we also need to increase home insulation. It's a package of measures which enable us to close the gap and to do what's necessary. But no, I wouldn't rule out nuclear.
Shockingly, I'm going to agree with you. I know, it's the first time ever, I think. Well, in the sense of, you know, in the long term, no. If we can have a situation where we don't have nuclear power, we don't have to rely on it. Absolutely, we should get there. But I think to get from A to B, we need nuclear power in the interim. I absolutely believe that we should be committing and opening up infrastructure and businesses to have renewable energy and investment in renewable energy, including wind, offshore, onshore, solar power, etc. But where we are now, there's 20,000 people that work at Hisham. Ideologically, yes, we can say that, you know, is it backward thinking talking about just economics? It's not just about economics. These are people's lives. These are people's, you know, we're talking about sustaining communities. And sustaining communities is about being pragmatic and realistic about the situation that we're in. Do I think that that's nuclear power is the answer? No, but do I think it's part of a mixed bag for now? Yes, but I believe that we should be working towards easing it out.
Thank you very much. Does the lady over there?
Yeah, this was my question actually, and all three of you have actually ignored what the question was about, which Phil did partially answer it. When I posted this, there was an article in The Guardian that quite clearly shows that within our grandchildren's lifetime, coastal erosion will mean that the storage facility up in Cumbria will be exposed to the elements and leak nuclear fuel everywhere. How on earth can you sit there and justify nuclear power when we are leaving a poisonous legacy for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
And how can you say in the short term, I mean, how can you look at nuclear as anything but long term?
10 years.
The power station is run for how long? How long is the waste radioactive for? It is long term. It's long term. You know, how many generations along?
Not anymore. It's not that anymore. Nuclear power is incredibly efficient. More efficient than you can actually think of.
It may well be.
Waste is radioactive for, and how we're going to dispose of it, because actually we've managed to dispose of it.
I think actually, could we let, because we're here to hear the candidates.
People have strong feelings about it. No, I think, look, you know, I'm here and I'm sure they'll come here to hear and listen, and I'm certainly here to listen, and if people feel strongly we can do that in a respectful way, absolutely. You weren't disrespectful, I think it's fine. I'm sorry if you felt that we didn't answer your question. I've got children, I hope to have grandchildren one day. I don't believe that I'm being that I didn't take it seriously. I think I take it very seriously. I didn't read the article that you said. As far as I'm aware, nuclear power is secure and it's low carbon and safe. Now, if it's
low carbon, you know,
problem. I'm open to learning and listening and finding out more.
There's a huge pile of crap up at Sellafield that nobody has a clue what to do. The next idea is to bury it. Have you any idea what a stupid concept that is?
Okay.
To bury crap that can kill us all. Come on.
We're talking about where we are. If we're talking about moving from one situation to another situation, we still have to have that journey. So the answer is, how do we have that journey? This is what how do we have that journey? I am open and willing to be lobbied and listen to whatever needs to be. If I'm the MP here, because this is what we're talking about, somebody's going to represent Morecambe and Lonsdale, I will listen to anybody in this room and anybody who comes to me with evidence and says, right, Mia, this is the case, you need to go forward and you need to lobby your government or your party about this. That, you know, I'm very clear about that. So I'm not denying what you're saying. What I'm saying is that, look, you know, we need to, from where we're at now, we can't just shut down.
But it's 10 years and £24 billion to build one power station before it's online. Can you imagine what the renewables industry could do with £24.9 billion for one power station?
But could we just a quarter of our, a power station, a power supply, a quarter of our electricity generates emissions, and it's really. we are where we are, it's not a perfect world by any stretch of any imagination. So I hear what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, but how are we going to move to that? You know,
but 10 years, we were not going to get any electricity out of a power station for 10 years.
I think now we should let Matt have a chance to answer, but Amina has said she's happy to learn and see the evidence, so that's an offer that people can take up. Matt?
I'm always happy to learn about the evidence. I think the point is, I'm not being complacent, far from it, about the risk that nuclear and nuclear waste pose. I just feel that it remains part of the solution. That's why I said in my answer, I believe in a combination of both nuclear power and renewables. I want to see more tidal, I want to see more solar, I want to see more wind. I think that's absolutely vital. I want to see greater insulation of homes, I want to see more efficient vehicles, and I also want to see a nuclear power station at Evesham, a third nuclear power station, as part of the ability to keep the lights on in Britain, to keep the energy supply going for Britain so it can respond to demand, and so that industry can have the confidence to plan and invest in Morecambe and Leamsdale and across our country for the future. I believe in Britain being able to gain energy independence without exploiting fossil fuels like gas and coal and nuclear as well as renewables. They're both, not either or, they're both the answer.
Phil, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just a short comment, because my comments are often characterised. If A, I want to immediately shut down the 2 power stations we already have, and B, that somehow I'm denying people lots of jobs. First of all, it's not the plan to shut down. Present power stations would just be allowed to run to their natural end, and then we would work out how to decommission them, I guess. But secondly, I'm not suggesting that by not having a third power station that I'm denying anybody jobs. What I'm obviously saying is that investment, that 24 billion or whatever amount we're talking, into developing renewable energy in this area actually supplies the jobs, and no doubt more, because it's been shown that in general, per gigawatt of installed power, this renewable industry is about 12 times more effective in generating jobs than nuclear. So we're not talking about denying people jobs at all here.
Okay. I'm going to move on now, but I was just going to ask, do you feel your question has been answered now?
I think candidates need to actually understand how the nuclear power station affects the wider environment and how the nuclear industry actually works and the amount of investment required in it.
Okay. Could I ask for other questions from the floor, please? Chair.
Yes, would you like to take that?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if the Labour Party candidate will oppose fracking, will commit to that, and to sign the frack-free promise.
Can we all answer?
I think... Let's go to Amina, and then... Can we... Okay.
I think we'd all like the opportunity to position.
Amina.
I'm shocked that question came up. I was very clear, and I've listened to the arguments about fracking and read stuff. But obviously, these are not my areas of expertise, if I've got any. I've also said that I'm not convinced by fracking, and I've said consistently till recently that if my community, I support what my community says. I'm still not convinced by fracking. I'm not convinced by fracking. That's my instinctual answer. If my community was saying that, look, we want you to make a decision on it and sign the frack-free promise and come out against fracking, then yes, I would do that, because that's the right thing to do if you're representing the community. Aside from the fact that personally I'm not convinced by it. I don't know.
So are you saying you're going to sign it?
Yeah, I have a picture outside already with it.
Okay.
And I did try to sign it earlier on today, actually. It just kept crashing, and I tried a number of times. So.
Thank you.
I don't believe it. I don't believe in fracking. I wasn't convinced by it. I looked into it. I'm very concerned with the potential under the models proposed for pollution, for environmental damage, for earthquakes and flammable drinking water, which for me was kind of the killer. It caught me funny when you turn on your tap and it bursts into flames. That probably is not working right. Also, actually, it's quite interesting that fracking and shale gas operations in America have been economically devastated by the sudden plunge in oil prices. So all that investment, all that training, all that equipment is now left to rot and to rust in places like South Dakota, and all those people who travelled there thinking they had jobs for life turned out they didn't even have jobs for the winter. So it's not a responsible solution. I come back again to things like renewables, energy efficiency, nuclear power, and absolutely, as I say, no, I'm not backing fracking. I want a frack-free Lancashire.
As I suggested in my opening remarks, I would want to ban not only fracking but any of these extreme forms of fossil fuel extraction. Obviously the environmental concerns are very important, but for me the absolute killer argument is we cannot afford to burn the fossil fuels we already have and avoid catastrophic climate change. Therefore it makes absolutely no sense to put any investment into any method which is going to produce more fossil fuels. As simple as that.
Another question from the floor.
Hi there, yeah. Simple formula question really. How does your party plan to make the shift from our present 3-planet living to 1-planet living? Seems we've gone down a terrible cul-de-sac and we need to completely resize society. How would your party do it?
Matt, can we start with you?
Yeah, wow. No one's ever asked me to completely redesign society without pre-warning. Well, absolutely. We need to move to a more efficient future. We need to move to a low energy future. But I don't want to see that meaning people suddenly living out their lives in grinding poverty. I don't want to see mass unemployment being done, from engines to home construction to power generation to renewable energies. There are a huge amount being developed and technologies being developed which will enable us to reduce the pollution and the carbon impact of human life on the earth. That's why I come back to things like Lib Dem policies on the Green Investment Bank is a little way towards that. That's providing public money towards a new renewable energy schemes as an example of encouraging money to move away from things like coal and gas and towards things like wind. Is an example of providing the power that we need, for example, without the disastrous pollution that our grandchildren would otherwise have to live with. That's all part of the answer.
Doubt or brew and hiss at once. I actually, this is the first time I've heard about this shift from 3-planet living to 1-planet living.
We're living on the amount of resources
yeah.
at the moment is the equivalent of...
Okay, yeah, so I'm pleased my ignorance in that. In terms of it goes back to climate change. Labour is very committed to have a global legally binding climate treaty to reduce carbon emissions. I know that fellow said that we're not being ambitious enough and we need to reduce it, and I do think that, like I said at the very beginning, that we in principle we agree a lot of things, the direction of travel, maybe not fast enough. I certainly wanted Miliband at the conference in Paris at the end of the year. I don't want David Cameron, and that's really the choice that we've got to have. This is the government that is not interested at all in dealing with climate change. I think there's many things that we can do. It is about reforming the energy market. It is about improving energy efficiency in homes. We've got policies on all of those. We've got policies about fighting climate change, empowering local governments so they can make decisions locally, having a 25-year plan for the recovery of nature, etc., etc. There's a whole host of things that I can go through. I think the biggest thing is recognising the challenge and making sure that we've got policies to deal with that, and Labour has. And certainly, never mind the manifesto, because it's very easy to reel off pledges from manifestos. But personally, I'm very conscious that we have finite resources, and we've got to find a way where we can live together in a world where it works. But again, I'll go back to, we've got to do that in a way where we have an understanding that we're asking people to shift from a way of living that is very comfortable for many of us in the developed world and very uncomfortable for people in developing worlds. And we've got to educate our people as well about what needs to be done at a micro level, but also at a macro level.
Obviously, technology has its part to play, but for me technology isn't where we start. First of all, we need a completely different relationship with each other and with the planet. I think it's time that we recognise that not everything that has a value has a price. So the root of our problem for me is the rise of an economic and political system, a neoliberal, individualistic economic system that is just only understands one thing: continual growth, and does not understand the sheer madness of having continual growth on a finite planet. The outpouring of this has been the carbon emissions, it's been increasing pollution, it's been ever greater inequality. So the root of it, first of all, is a society which recognises that fundamentally we need greater equality, we need to allow people to live lives that allow them the time and the energy and the space to look after their environment. The technology is vital. As a Green Party, we would invest a total of £80 billion in energy efficiency and renewable energy just over the life of the next government. Now the difference is, I would say, is that many other people are saying we need these technologies, we need these changes, but what we are saying is that this cannot be done within the ideology of austerity. We reject that as the way forward. Austerity is purely an ideology about moving wealth from the poorest to the few wealthiest in our society, and that it is not necessary. We believe it is right that those who are the wealthy in society should pay more, and that we should create the wealth, and if necessary borrow the wealth, to invest in the future, to find that money to develop the technologies that we need. So for me, the critical point is that shift in seeing the planet and all that live on it in a new relationship, and it's not just a place for us to extract resources from to make ourselves more comfortable.
Hi, of the three candidates that are here, I think the only person who believes what he's saying is Phil.
Well, that's not true.
I think that's true. And I want to ask Amelia, there was an article in The Guardian today about the fact that you won't move here and live with us amongst our community. You're prepared to commute all that way and leave your children at home being looked after by your other children. I found that really hurting. You know, and also one second. Well, my question is that the economy here is actually doing really well. And we need things like the power station. It employs a lot of people. And I'm just concerned that if you were in charge, the MP, you would not allow this area to develop how it's developed. It's a fantastic area and it needs protecting, but it needs the right business head to run it. You can't do it with just words alone.
Can I answer the question? Firstly, thank you for making the assumption that Phil's the only person that believes what he's saying, because I certainly believe what I'm saying, and I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't. I could do what David Morris did and not turn up. So I will disagree with you. Secondly, thank you for being concerned about the welfare of my children. I've been a single parent for probably 15 years now, and I think I've done a quite good job in bringing them up and feeding them and keeping a roof over their head. And you know, they don't bring trouble to my door. They don't commit. I'm going to answer the question first. My youngest is 15. My daughter is 17. My other son is 23 and then 24. And I think that you may have read the article wrong, because I categorically said, and it was raised at my selection nearly 2.5 years ago, if I was selected and if I won, would I move? If I won, and I said absolutely, because I believe that being a politician at that level means that you serve the people that elect you. That is an honourable profession, and it's dishonourable to be an MP of a constituency and not live in it. So I would absolutely move. I've said it time and time again, and unfortunately it has been a Conservative Party smear, which is, you know, it gets out there. So that's not true. Secondly, I come from a poor working class family, left school at 16, and do believe that everybody should give back to society, and I think I've given back. I volunteer. I've been to the local food bank, I've been to local youth groups, and I'm volunteering with one at the moment to do the float for Carnival. So I put my money where my mouth is. I've got no problem about having difficult questions and stuff, and I'll turn up. I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I'll fight for this area. And the thing that I find astonishing is that as a single parent who's raised four people in this society, that is extremely difficult at times, actually, extremely difficult. And the article said how difficult it was. And I've been on benefits, and I didn't enjoy it because actually there's nothing romantic about being on benefits. It's very difficult, it's very poor living. But I worked my way to support my family and give back, and I'll continue to do that. And I've come from a close-knit family. We all pull together. That's what my family are doing now. My two children are 23 and 24. I don't know if you have children, but you try telling a 23 and 24-year-old what to do and where they should live and what they should do, and it doesn't work. And I've got no right to. They're independent adults in their own right. And then the third point that you made was that you needed somebody with a good business head. That's entirely your opinion. You're entitled to that. Don't vote for me. If thousands of other people will, then I will fight to represent this community. I love it here. I love the Bay. And if you're talking about a more equal society, we're talking about more equal and equitable society and a fairer society. Parliament is made up of mostly white, middle and upper class people, and particularly males. Yeah. I left school at 16, raised 4 children, have contributed and worked in the volunteer sector for 20 years. I couldn't afford to move here. No, don't get your violin out. But I don't want your sympathy, because you know what? I can give as good as I get. So I don't want you. I can't afford to move here. If I could, I actually would. But if you want a more diverse representative parliament, then what you need to do is have people like me in there. Yeah.
Members of the panel the same question, because I think it's sexist that was addressed to the
I believe the question was about whether Amina would move here, and they live here. I think.
If I can, firstly, I absolutely believe what I'm saying. I wouldn't drag myself out here on a Tuesday night when it's cold, go and sit in a room and chat to you lovely people if I didn't believe what I was saying. I turn up and say the things I believe in. I believe in integrity in politics, so I absolutely stand by the things I say. I don't just make this up. I say it because I believe it. I'm a Liberal Democrat because I believe in a fair and equal liberal society that creates opportunity for everyone. That's why I joined the Lib Dems. That's what I'm fighting for every day. And yeah, I grew up here. I've got family here. I've got family in this room lurking somewhere. I'd absolutely, if I won here, I'd live here. I'd raise my family here. I'd be delighted and honoured to do so. Frankly, I've never met Amina's kids, but if their mum's anything to go by, I'm sure they're a cracking bunch, and I'm sure they'll be very happy living wherever they do.
Another question, which was about needing a business head to run the place. So I think it'd be worth answering that.
What a good chat. Thank you so much. Keep us on track. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. The economy, business is vital. The best way to fight austerity is to create an economic recovery that works for everyone. And I really believe that we need both small businesses and large businesses. We need investment from abroad, and we need, as I said earlier, a better future for farmers. We need more homes being built. There need to be affordable homes to buy and affordable homes to rent. All of that is about creating economic recovery that's working for everyone, giving people jobs they can be proud of, allowing people to have apprenticeships. The Dems have increased apprenticeship funding. Vince Cable and the business department doing great work there. That's about getting people jobs and skills they can be proud of, they can raise families that they can take pride in, and have a future they can have confidence in. That's about economic recovery for everyone. That's what I believe.
And finally, just so we ask the men the same question, I'm trying to think what the question is, but do you think, I don't know, do you have kids? And if you do you think you can be a good MP and a good parent at the same time?
Absolutely.
Which I think was the basis of the question.
I I don't have kids. I'd love to have kids one day. I don't currently have any children, and I believe that I could be a good parent and a good MP at the same time. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive, no.
Right. Okay. First thing, thank you that you believe and can tell that I believe in what I'm saying. I've spent quite a bit of time with Matt and Amina now, and actually I think they believe in what they say, so I have no doubt about that. They're committed to what they're telling you. I live in the constituency, so that's okay. Get through that one. What's the next one?
Parenting and MP.
Business element. Okay.
How would you mix parenting and being a member of Parliament?
Well, my eldest daughter has told me that if I get elected, I have to Skype her every night. To be honest, I think it's difficult. There's one part of this whole idea of standing for candidates I found most difficult. We spent a long time talking about it as a family, and I had to make sure the rest of the family were willing and happy for me to do this, and they have been extremely supportive. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's the thought of spending 4 days a week down in Westminster, away from the rest of my family. I do not relish the thought, and the only reason I'm contemplating it is because I think that the Green Party message has to be got out, and we need that vision. So that's why I'm going to do it. But I don't relish the thought. Business head. As I said earlier, we believe that austerity is ideologically driven, and we are keen to invest in the economy. That is in many ways in public services, in the vast amount of work that needs to be done in energy efficiency, and as I said before, we should have a very ambitious plan for this area in renewables. And as such, I believe these will bring tremendous prosperity to the area. From Manifesto, we believe that we will be creating at least 1 million new jobs from what we're proposing in our various programmes. So I have no doubt that this will be a great time for this area.
We've got time for a couple more quick questions before Amina has to go.
Thank you. I'm just very aware that another coalition government is an increasing likelihood after May the 7th. And I'd be very keen to know what are the red lines when it comes to the environment that your parties would have in any coalition.
Are you pushing it to me?
No.
Yeah, you're right. I think that we are heading towards... Wow, okay. You're right, we are heading towards a coalition. The polls for the two big old parties have been flatlining for months. Basically, you need to vote Lib Dem if you don't want an extremist coalition. That's the first thing I'll get out there. Labour want to go in with the SNP, well, they don't want to, but they will be forced to go in with the SNP, and the SNP want to break up Britain, and the Conservatives are planning a sort of horrifying Conservative DUP UKIP sort of mash-up, and that's a truly scary prospect, quite frankly. So, I mean, in terms of red lines for the environment, I wouldn't want to have fracking. That'd be my personal red line. I wouldn't sign up to a coalition government that was going to fund or license fracking. I think that would be sort of a top environmental red line. I think as well, I think about red lines, they've been quite negative, actually. You can turn them a positive. You can say, I want a red line, I want to see investment, rather than saying, I want to stop something, say I want to do something. So I would increase funding for the Green Investment Bank, for example, and I'd see the 5 green laws that I mentioned earlier. I want to see them enacted as part of an environmental agenda for Lib Dems in government. I just reiterate, Lib Dems are the centrist, moderate force in this Parliament, and we want to be so again in the next Parliament. A Labour SNP deal would threaten the very fabric of the country, and the Conservatives want to tie in with the homophobes and racists of the DUP.
Okay, I think we don't have much time left, so Mina.
The answer is I don't know what our red lines are, our party red lines are in terms of the leadership in the party, because we haven't had that discussion while we're fighting for a Labour majority. Obviously, we'll if we don't have that, we'll work that out. I think. No.
You've got 9 days and you're still thinking about it.
No. You haven't got the party.
Scotland's a third of the country. They're entitled to the representation.
I was just going to say that I do find it interesting that. Well, I was going to say that I do find it interesting that Matt's talking about democracy and questioning democracy. We're not a dictatorship. People vote. They go to the ballot box. If people vote for the SNP, they vote for the SNP. That's a democracy that we live in. So I think we should be very careful about throwing stone when you live in glass houses. Quite frankly. So I don't know what our party's policy is on that, as far as we're going to go in with a majority Labour government. But I'm sure I can say in good faith that we will not, change our policy on freezing energy bills and reforming the market. That we will stick to our climate change agenda and decarbonising. Committed to decarbonising targets to 2030, and I think part of the question for me is very much about saying, well, look, part of this whole issue is about democracy, and if we're talking about red lines and about what we should or shouldn't do, 50 million people didn't vote in the last general election. Personally, I think that's a real issue. I think when we're talking about what as a party we should be doing, we should be engaging people, and we should be engaging people across the spectrum and making sure that they understand what's at stake and trying to encourage people to vote, because the future of our country is at stake.
I'm going to move you on now because we've got very little time. Phil.
Talking too much.
I don't think there's been many heartwarming images from the election campaign, but if there was one, I think from the leaders' debates where the leaders of the progressive parties, they supported each other and how they congratulated each other afterwards. I think that was an extremely positive vision for a possible politics for the future. So no, SNP is no bogeyman. I would very much welcome seeing them having an influence within the Parliament. In terms of the Green Party rejects the idea of coalition. We don't want to be tied down to a coalition. We've seen what it did to the Liberal Democratic Party. They were forced to do all sorts of horrible things by their bigger partners. But what we would be interested in is confidence and supply, an alliance basically, because ultimately we believe in voting with the heart in all matters, both individually and as a party. So we would support those policies that we believe in, and we're not going to sign up to support policies we don't. Obviously, because the question particularly asked about environment, anything to do with fracking we would of course oppose, but basically anything in line with our manifesto we are going to support, and anything that we believe is going to be bad for the environment and for the future of this planet we are going to oppose.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one last question, which is
Could I just make a comment on that? How many more times has Ed Miliband got to say that he will not sign up to a coalition with the SNPs? And all the time the Tories saying, what's it going to be like when he joins up with the SNPs? What's it going to be like when he joins up with the SNP? What we're going to have? It's ridiculous. He said so many times he will not do it. At the moment, he's looking for a majority. So why do people keep saying he's doing it?
Okay, thanks for your comment. I think we've got time for one last question for Amina.
In all the discussions about the environment and protecting it, we never hear any comments about the population rise. The population is increasing, the world population is increasing. These have considerable effects on the environment. We see it here with the suggestion we might have 60 houses up there and 20 down there. We need more emphasis on family control, perhaps immigration, and perhaps assisted suicide for older people like me.
So what's your question, sir?
What are you going to do about the population?
In the UK? In the population in the UK?
All right, in the UK.
I'm glad you narrowed it down to the UK because it's a bit difficult, and obviously, as you know, that I haven't helped with increasing the population. If I had, better, was more informed and made better choices, then maybe that wouldn't be the case. But I love them to bits, and I wouldn't be without them. They were very much the making of me. I think you raise an important question. I think that I think it's about education, and I think that things like good sex education, talking about relationships, talking about the impact on our planet, and the resources that we have got and what we take from them, is part of the answer to this. Part of it is about tackling climate change, but also tackling the way that we live, which is what we've all been alluding to. Changing the way that we live so we don't use the resources up. I read an article, since we've all seemed to have read articles today, I read an article about somebody challenging that fact that population is rising, and that actually the planet can absorb us. In terms of assisted suicide, this is something that I've been lobbied on for and against for people. I'm completely torn. It's a very moral and ethical decision for me. I wouldn't want to put anybody in that situation myself personally, if it's me when when it came to that time. And so I don't know what the answer is to that. I know that's my frank and honest answer. In terms of immigration, we certainly haven't got time to get into that debate. I would very much love to, but I think that if we're going to talk about immigration, then we've got to talk about everything and all as part of the immigration issue, if you want to put it like that.
So will you not say something about your party's policy on immigration and supporting immigration controls, because that was part of the question?
Oh, sorry, she was a good chance, she. Yes, we are talking about having tighter border controls and controlling people coming into the country, and I know that may not be popular with some. I also we're talking about a contributory factor in terms of people being here and living and working here. But I think we also need to acknowledge that immigration is not the boogeyman that everybody purports it to be, and I think that there's this whole argument about immigration and blaming all our society's ills on immigrants, but actually poor housing and not investing in the NHS and 0-hour contracts are not about immigration. That's about the way that we live, and we need to tackle those things before we start blaming other people.
Got about a minute to solve the population problem in the UK.
Right, we do like to pack these questions in. Right, what the population? Yes, my understanding is that the UK population is not growing at a particularly fast rate. But I think when we talk about population, I would like to put it a bit more global. What we do need to talk about is the consumption. That the problem for me is not the growth of population, but it's how different parts of the world consume and the amount of resources they consume. It's been said, if everyone consumed at our rate, it would be 3 planets worth. Where the population is fastest in the world, their consumption is tiny compared to us, and it's not threatening the planet in the way that we are threatening the planet with our massive consumption. So for me, that is the bigger issue than the population growth as such. I absolutely agree with Amina that often when you talk to people and they say, I'm worried about immigration, you say, what is it that worries you? They say houses and public services. And you say, well, that's not about immigration, that is about poor investment, that is about this ideological austerity that we've been subjected to. What we need to do is properly invest in those things, build the houses we need, and reinvest in the services that would allow us to give everybody the service they require. Can I just do assisted dying? Why not, eh? Why did I say that? Assisted dying. Okay, yes, it is an extremely difficult and sensitive area. I personally am supportive of the bill that's presently sort of stuck halfway through Parliament that would allow for assisted dying in very well governed, very well regulated, very well supported situations. I definitely don't think assisted dying should be linked to anything to do with population and overpopulation. We are only talking about assisted dying here, where somebody who is capable of making that decision themselves, who feels their standard of living has reached a point they no longer wish to bear, and wish to be allowed to end their lives in that way. So I support that situation.
I'm going to just tackle the assisted suicide, I think, first. I'm not in favour of assisted suicide because I'm very concerned about the pressure that will put upon people who are very disabled or terminally ill but not dying yet to end their lives. I'm very worried that people would feel pressured to actually end their lives, or you're being a burden or whatever. So for that reason, I think actually instead of talking about assisted suicide, we need to talk about better dying. That's why we need hospices. That's why you need to all go and support your local St John's Hospice, because actually it's about making people comfortable. It's about palliative care. It's about making people feel at ease so they can die as great as possible to die at home at the time of their choosing, if not, not as a suicide, but actually to go out of the world with some dignity and some grace in a natural way. In terms of immigration, the way to solve the current pressure on housing is to build more homes, and we need more affordable homes and more affordable homes to rent, absolutely. I do not believe in scapegoating immigration. I think it takes a fantastic amount of guts to take yourself across a continent or across the world to move to another country, to work really, really hard, and I think that the work ethics and the money and the talents and skills that immigrants bring to our country are absolutely vital, and I would absolutely praise them for that. In terms of world population, I think figures show that as societies become more educated and more developed, the number of children per family decreases, and so the answers are more sex education, more access to contraceptives, and you will see people having less and less children, and in part because of the increased health of those societies means that the children live longer. They don't need to have extra children, so that's a natural thing. I presume you're referring to Thomas Malthus and the Malthusian proposition that population will increase ever more and we'll run out of food. Well, Malthus has been found to be mathematically and scientifically incorrect. We're not going to suddenly run out of space for people, because there won't always be 12 children per family across the world. There's a natural development of human society in that way. So that on that, I think that covers everything. Thank you very much.
Yes. Avina, it is about 8:05. Have you got time for one more question, or do you have to rush now?
I do need to go, but I'll take the one last question.
Okay. We have one last question for Avina.
You've said you're anti-fracking. You've said you're not convinced. I know what the Green Party stance is. It's all very well saying you're anti-fracking, but does that mean, again, Green Party, there's no whip, but does that mean that you would defy the party whip? Because that's not the position of your parties. Both your parties are pro-fracking with regulation. Now, I don't believe that any amount of regulation can make it safe, so I want to know, would you defy the party whip?
That's a very good, simple, short question for you can answer.
I should have left when I had the chance. No, don't apologise. It's an excellent question. I don't know is the honest answer. Because I think it's very easy. No, it's very easy for me to say that I'll defy the party whip here, actually. But I don't know what context that would be, and I've been asked that on other issues as well. What would you defy the party whip? There are definitely some, my red line is, if we're talking about red lines, it's the death penalty. I couldn't support it under any circumstances, I can't do it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I've always said if my community was against fracking, and it seems very much that my community is, then I would, if that's what my community wanted. And that's the best I can probably do in terms of answering you. I know it's our party policy, but I think that we're broad church enough and mature enough to have those debates internally. I say that, hoping that I don't get
just quickly, so how would you decide if your community was against fracking?
Well, you get lobbied. I get over 30, 40 emails a day now, signing up all sorts of things. The pressure groups have certainly been lobbying us, the national one. But also people come and see you.
Yeah. So if the community is clearly anti-fracking, you would defy the party whip on it?
Yes.
Okay. Good, clear answer. Matt?
Yeah, I'd defy the party whip on that. The Liberal Democrats actually elect our whips. We're a little bit different. We don't have the sort of arm-twisting, sort of bully boy approach. What?
Still a whip, but yeah.
Well, I mean, the word whip basically means organising parliamentary governance.
Would you vote against party policy then? Can I put it?
I would vote against party policy that impacted negatively on the residents of Morecambe and Loosedale, or impacted on my personal conscience. So, if there was an issue which would damage Morecambe and Loosedale, such as fracking, I would vote against party policy. If there was an issue in which I was personally opposed on grounds of conscience, there is no whip for grounds of personal conscience in the Liberal Democrats, so I'd be free to vote whichever way. And as I say,
Liberal Democrats actually have a much more collaborative way of working together as a group in Parliament. We don't have an arm-twisting whip system.
So basically you're saying you would vote against your party policy on fracking?
If you elect me as your Member of Parliament, I will vote against fracking.
Okay, that's very clear. But do I need to ask Phil?
I believe the Parliamentary Green Party has never defied the party whip. Just to be serious about it, is Green Party policy that when we have many more MPs, there will be no party whip. That is party policy, so there will be no whip to defy, and of course there is no doubt that we would vote against fracking.
Thank you very much. Would you like a 1-minute closing statement? Yep.
Okay, thank you. It's a shame that our friendly gentleman in the audience has gone. So I actually wanted to say thank you to both of my colleagues on the left and the right of me for running a really clean campaign, and we have shared lots of platforms together, and it's been really, really good, and it shows that we kind of mature politics in this day and age. Obviously, I will do the pitch where you're going to get a Tory MP or a Labour MP here, so I'll urge any of you who maybe sit on the fence, give us a chance. I certainly wanted Miliband going to Paris at the end of the year. And the final thing is, if I am successful and I do win, I would say that I will have an open door policy in terms of building a progressive left here in Morecambe and Noonsdale, and please come and harass me.
As I say at the start, Liberal Democrats have clear policies. We've got 5 green laws we want to enact in the next Parliament. We've got a green investment bank in this Parliament. I want to see that expanded. I'm committed to working for people of Morecambe and Lonsdale. I would put you first and foremost and uppermost in my mind to take care both of our wonderful natural environment we have here and the fantastic people that live here. Thank you.
I don't think I'm the only one who's fed up of politics as usual. This is an exciting election because for once we have some genuine decisions to make. This is a chance to vote with our hearts. This is a chance to actually vote for the things we really believe in rather than just whatever the tactics seems to suggest. One thing this election may show is just how broken our electoral system is. We may end up with 20% of the people who vote represented by 4 or 5 MPs. If that happens, the time is to get our marching boots on and make sure that we have proportional representation by 2020 and we have a proper political system, a democratic system in this country. But for now, please, vote with your hearts, vote Green. Thank you.
Well, I just thank the candidates again. Thank you, Mina. Let's go. Say that Matt and Phil are happy to stay around for a little bit and chat. We've put the kettle on next door, so there's refreshments.
Amina, is that a Murphy scarf?